deep within the limestone mountain ranges. In the northern lands of an ancient kingdom lies a remarkably deep natural catacomb, a vertical abyss extending over 10 meters. Plunges straight into the eternal darkness of the earth. The bottom of this abyss is called the Chasm Catacomb by archaeologists. Nearly 500,000 years ago, an unprecedented act took place right here. Not one, not two, but dozens of individuals belonging to a hominin species were brought into the darkness. They included men, women, and young individuals. This was not a place of habitation. Because there are no traces of hearths or daily life tools, their remains could not have been washed in by water or accidentally fallen in such large numbers. Some force brought them right to the edge of the abyss and then let them drop into the night. These creatures were not yet modern humans, and they were not yet Neanderthals. They were a species from an earlier evolutionary branch, but already knew how to perform an act that humanity would take millennia to define. They bid farewell to their relatives with a clear and deliberate purpose. During those 430,000 years, the entire history of modern humans is just like the blink of an eye. The Chasm Catacomb is even more ancient than the mastery of fire in many regions. It challenges all of our assumptions about when symbolic thought began to sprout. But the most shocking point lies in a single artifact. Found among the sediment of bones, excavators call it the Dawn Relic. It is a pink quartzite hand axe. Beautifully crafted on both faces, this was the most precious item a hominin individual could possess at that time. Someone decided to discard it into the catacomb, not because it was lost, but as a deliberate offering. This action carried no practical purpose. For daily survival, this is the most ancient grave good recorded in the annals of humanity. That was the first moment a creature on this planet understood the value of giving away. Moving to another frozen cave, where researchers found the traces of a quiet traveler. He departed this world approximately 70,000 years ago. The pollen grains surrounding the body were not caused by nature or animals. They were meticulously arranged into dense clusters right next to the deceased. Wildflowers gathered from the mountain slopes were placed into the grave as a final farewell. This traveler had a leg deformity and was deaf in one ear. Yet he lived to be 40 years old. He could not have survived to that age without the care of his community. Those flowers do not tell us what they thought, but they confirm that they cared. Leaving the Rocky Mountains, we come to a cave, located at a dizzying altitude where the air freezes the lungs. In the deepest recesses of the cave, scientists discovered stone chests. These boxes were not discarded randomly, but were arranged in a strange order. Skulls measuring nearly 30 centimeters in length were placed facing outward in specific directions. Limb bones such as femurs and tibias were stacked around those skulls. This is evidence of a symbolic thinking that existed 75,000 years ago. Something or someone performed the movement of these body parts. Deep into the cold mountain, at a dried lake bed on the other side of the globe, we find the mother of the ancient lake bed. Her remains were cremated approximately 42,000 years ago, after the body was burned on a wooden pyre. The remaining bone fragments were gathered and crushed. This was not an accidental event, but a carefully calculated sequence of actions. Just a few years later, at the exact same location, people found a man in a pasture with his head resting in his lap. His body was covered in red ochre from head to toe. The source of this red ochre was located more than 200 kilometers away from his final resting place. His fellow humans carried that precious red pigment on a long journey just to clothe the deceased. This action confirmed that his death held a meaning far beyond physical survival. During the Ice Age, small groups of people began to carve the same type of figurines. These were small statuettes of women with exaggerated features. The material changed from soapstone in the highlands to terracotta in the valleys, but the shape was consistent. They were not created to hold food or store water. They seemed to be created to worship some divine entity. There were statues that were crafted and then immediately buried in the frozen ground. This ritual was repeated across many generations. In a low hilly region, where 14 teenagers accidentally crawled into a hole in the ground. They discovered the greatest art gallery of the Ice Age. The walls inside the cave were covered with vivid images of red and black bulls. They were not paintings meant to be viewed in a conventional way. Many rooms could only be accessed by crawling on hands and knees through darkness lasting for hours. Young people were frequently brought into the deepest parts of this cave. The sound inside the chambers echoed in a haunting way when there was singing or noise. The images of the bulls seemed to breathe and move under the light of burning fat torches. For the children, this was an experience indistinguishable from magic. It was an educational method, applying primitive neuroscience. They did not enter the cave to play, but to step into a temple of sounds. At a dried marshland in the north, we find the deer antler masks. 21 red deer skulls were found in a condition that showed they were not food. The frontal bone had been thinned and shaped. Small holes were carefully drilled to secure this item onto a human head. The wearer would no longer be an ordinary hunter, but would become a hybrid entity between human and beast. This is evidence that shamanism regarding animal spirits had rooted deeply into the human consciousness. In a limestone cave belonging to a deep valley lies another controversial piece of evidence. The human skulls here were processed in a special way to be turned into drinking cups. The cranial vaults were meticulously cleaned, and the edges smoothed into regular round rims. This was not brutality, driven by starvation or warfare. It was a complex funerary ritual where life and death intertwined. Perhaps drinking from these cups was a way for ancestors to always remain present at every gathering. At a hilltop in the southern land, a shepherd found strange stones protruding from the soil. It was an ancient temple built even before the birth of agricultural civilization. This temple resembled a machine for processing the souls of the deceased. Around 8,000 years before the Common Era, the builders decided to fill in the temple. They deliberately buried it under layers of soil, stones, and animal bones. The labor required to bury such a massive structure was no less than the labor to build it. Perhaps they wanted to hide a secret that we have never fully understood. Finally, we come to the Enlightenment technique of the Neolithic era. In a museum drawer sits a human skull with a hole cleanly drilled above the ear. The owner of this skull did not die from the wound, but continued to live for many years. The bone surrounding the drilled hole grew back, showing healing after the surgery. Ancient people used sharp stone blades to cut slow concentric circles. The patient remained conscious throughout the process, enduring the vibration of the bone drilling. They performed this not only for trauma, but also for a spiritual purpose. They believed that evil spirits or voices were pressing against the inside of the skull. That hole was the exact door to release those sufferings to the outside. The people performing the surgery believed in it, and the patient believed in it too. Thousands of years later, these small holes are still there, as a testament to an ironclad belief. These 10 rituals are 10 windows looking into the seemingly simple minds of ancient people. They were dreamers, mourners, and healers. They knew how to drill into the skulls of their fellow humans to release invisible pain. They knew how to crawl for hours in the dark to sing to the stone walls. They were the first to know how to place a flower on a body and understand its meaning. They were the first who dared to look at a predator and consider it a teacher. They were the first to imagine a great mother in the form of small statues. The instinct to gather around a fire, to tell stories about ancestors, still flows in our veins today. Every ritual taking place in the world this week is a continuation of a red thread stretching back millions of years. The history of the human inner world began much deeper than we ever thought. Most of their stories have been erased by time forever. Their calls in the deep caves have vanished into thin air. Not a single word of theirs is preserved in the texts we read today, but the physical evidence remains, challenging us to find the answers. The pollen grains still cling tightly to the soil of the old cave. The red ochre still stains the bones. By the dry lake bed, the skull cups still sit quietly. In the glass display cabinets of museums, they remind us of the people who once lived, once loved, and once feared. We cannot know their names or the language they used, but we know that they once looked up at the sky and wondered about their place in the universe. They laid the very first bricks for what we call culture and religion. Our curiosity about the past is the greatest tribute to them. Each new archaeological discovery is another piece added to the giant puzzle of the evolution of the soul. We do not only inherit genetic traits from them, but also inherit the need to search for meaning. Perhaps the reason we are drawn to these artifacts is because a part of us is still longing to connect with the ancestors who dared to face the darkness first, connect with those who dared to paint the first pictures on the stone walls, connect with those who dared to bury their loved ones. With all due respect, the journey into the past never ends. It only truly begins when we ask why they did those things. And in that answer, we will find ourselves. We will find the true essence of being human. Ancient rituals have not disappeared. They have merely transformed their shapes. From caves to temples, from campfires to electric lights, we are still creatures seeking connection through rituals. Whether it is a modern funeral or a small commemorative ceremony, all share the same origin. That origin lies in the hands that trembled as they placed a flower on the deceased. Tens of thousands of years ago, that origin lies in the eyes that looked deep into the darkness of the abyss and chose to face it. Never forget that we stand on the shoulders of spiritual giants. They taught us how to not only survive, but to live meaningfully. Thank you for joining me on this journey back through time. Hopefully, through this video, you have gained a fresh perspective on what our ancestors left behind. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel to continue exploring unsolved historical mysteries. Each of your likes and shares is the motivation for us to search for even more ancient stories. See you again in the next episodes of Lost Ancient History. We will unlock other doors of time together. Because history is never just old pages of paper. History is the breath, is the blood flowing in each of us right at this moment. Keep your curiosity. Just as our ancestors kept the fire in the dark night. Every mystery begins with a simple question, and that question can change the way you look at the world forever. See you all very soon. Goodbye, and wish you a deeply meaningful day. Finally, remember that darkness is not the end. It is the place where the light of thought begins to shine brightest. What we discussed today is just the tip of a massive iceberg. There are countless undiscovered caves and unnamed secrets, and we will be the next ones to step inside. Truth often lies in the most inaccessible places. Therefore, do not hesitate to venture into lands never before stepped upon. That is where the answers are waiting for us. Curiosity is the privilege of human beings. Use it to enrich your own soul, and now it is time to close today's journey. But the story remains there in the sediment layers of the earth, waiting for later generations to come and listen, waiting for later generations to come and learn, waiting for later generations to come and honor. See you again in the next journeys. Always maintain clarity and a spirit of learning, because knowledge is the only key to open the most ancient doors. Goodbye.